Hello librarians, I'm Elise Levine, Director of Sales and Marketing for Shadow Mountain Publishing, and in this short video I'll be letting you know about our new and upcoming titles. You can find EARCs on NetGalley and Edelweiss. The Legend of the Dream Giants is a middle grade hybrid format of a full novel plus 120 graphic novel style illustrations. It's the story of Berg. When he was very young, his mother hid him in a cave and led an angry mob of villagers away, sacrificing her own life to protect her son. In all the years since, Berg has lived alone. The only reminders of his family are his mother's satchel and his recurring dreams of a white bear, representing his mother, who comforts him and guides him through life's challenges, and these dreams are conveyed without words by the illustrations as you see on the screen. When he feels lonely, he will risk entering a village to trade a forest trinket for food. He's really searching for kindness and a friend, but with every attempt he makes, people only see his massive size and cruelly chase him away. I'd like to read you 2 sentences to give you a flavor of the highly emotive writing style. This is from Chapter 1. Berg ran with all his might, his feet bounding the earth as he fled toward the deep wild woods. He knew the people of Sleeping City would soon follow, with their pitchforks and torches and pointed sticks. Berg cried as he ran, not because he was afraid of the people, but because the people were afraid of him. This is middle grade fantasy, but it's also in our Empathy Building titles catalog, and it's a great read-alike for kids who enjoyed the one and only Ivan. This is a young reader's adaptation of The Rent Collector by Cameron Wright, a best-selling title which is very popular with book clubs and community-wide reading programs. It's based on a true story about a woman who lives in severe poverty at a city dump in Cambodia, scratching out basic subsistence by sifting through trash for recyclables and things which can be repaired and sold. In the story, it says all her worldly possessions could be held in her 2 hands. The rent collector is a woman who everyone hates, but our protagonist learns the rent collector can read, and she begs to be taught, and the rent collector reluctantly agrees. As our protagonist begins to read, she realizes there's a whole world outside of the dump, and that gives her hope that she can one day have a brighter future. And as the women read together, they bond. We learn of the rent collector's tragic past under the atrocities of the Khmer Rouge, and we see the power of literacy to connect people by sharing experiences. Coming in fall of 22, we'll have a young reader's adaptation of The Orphan Keeper, also by Cameron Wright. Trusting True North takes place during a pandemic, as a girl is separated from her mother when the border closes and her father is a nurse who is busy at the hospital with people sick from the virus. Because everyone is so distracted by the virus, our protagonist reasons she must figure out how to resolve all her problems, which unfold right along with the pandemic. This is a timely topic and one which balances a real health crisis, as people in the neighborhood are hospitalized with the virus, with the also very real mental health issues of feeling scared, isolated, and not heard. Missing Oakley is about 2 sisters, one their parents' favorite and the other feels unheard. When Oakley dies in a tragic accident, Phoebe is overwhelmed with grief and scared. She lies about how the accident happens and confronts an eyewitness who thinks Phoebe pushed her sister into the river. And there's a very timely sub-theme about how even an eyewitness account can be misleading and inaccurate. Stella is told from the point of view of a beagle who works in law enforcement, and on a routine call, she is momentarily distracted and misses the scent of an explosive which detonates, taking the life of her handler. Stella experiences anxiety and flashbacks and blames herself. She thinks surely she must be a bad dog. A dog training expert agrees to foster her. Though sad, Stella is fond of the trainer's daughter Chloe, who has epilepsy, and is very loving and nurturing. As they spend time together, Stella realizes she can pick up the scent of a chemical surge before Chloe has a seizure, and Stella finds a new purpose in her life of service. New in fall is Book 2 in the Lost Wonderland Diaries series. 2 modern-day kids find in their library the Lost Diaries of Lewis Carroll, which opens a portal back to Wonderland. They see familiar characters who have now become dangerous monsters. Our 2 protagonists represent 2 aspects of the Wonderland stories. Celia, the girl, is logical and a math whiz, but she's dyslexic and hates reading. Her mom is a librarian, by the way. Tyrus, the boy, is a self-described book nerd who is very creative. They represent logic and imagination. Both are needed to work through the challenges in this adventure. Dragon Watch by Brandon Mull is a #1 New York Times bestselling series and the sequel series to Fablehaven. Return of the Dragon Slayers, the series finale, came out in the fall and also hit the New York Times bestseller list. On our Edelweiss catalog, you can find a reader's guide to the entire series. Legend of the Dragon Slayer is a companion title and a visual discovery of the first ever origin story of Dragon Watch. It also has character insights from the author. New in middle grade fantasy, Champion's Quest is a series about a bunch of kids who see a weird curiosity shop in town, and the window display proves far too tempting. So they go in to explore, and that transports them straight into a role-playing game, something like Dungeons & Dragons, where they have to overcome their real-world vulnerabilities to outplay their game foes. It has plenty of intense action as they battle, and there's also fun, oddball characters, which reminded me a bit of Willy Wonka, and that adds a lighter note to the gameplay. The main characters are racially and ethnically diverse and represent a wide range of life experiences. The 2 boys are foster kids living in a group home, and one struggles with panic attacks. The author says a main theme of the book is that life has many hard challenges, but at the same time, it wasn't all bad. It was also great. This is a look at some recent titles. You'll see a lot of State Award nominees and winners on this list. Coming in fall is the new book by the authors of Mustaches for Maddie, called Virtually Me, a story which takes place right after a pandemic, when schools are back open. But the students may also choose to enroll in a virtual reality school, where they are represented by avatars. And the story follows 3 students who are challenged in different ways by attending in-person school. Shadow Mountain is a clean content publisher for our kids and YA titles, and you can imagine the challenge of doing YA with no drugs, no violence, no sex, and no foul language. But our characters and stories don't represent some utopian world of goodness. They're teens in the real world, experiencing at times overwhelming emotional pain. Paul, Big and Small shows the drastic consequences of bullying as the school deals with the suicide of the kid who is the bully, and it's told from the perspective of his victim. Waiting for Fitz is an Own Voices story and features a cast of teens living in a psych ward with a spectrum of mental health challenges, trying to figure out who they are and how they can fit in when society labels them and constantly judges them as being different and being damaged. What the other 3 don't know is about 4 teens, each playing a role in high school, but each harboring a secret. On a dangerous river rafting trip, they will confront their fears, drop their social masks, and realize they can finally be true to themselves. Even the Dog Knows is new fiction from the best-selling author of Christmas Jars, Jason F. Wright, and is a story of a family's old beloved dog who takes a final road trip to help his humans find forgiveness and healing. Moving on to historical fiction, these titles are also suitable for young readers and are especially relevant in our troubled times, as ordinary citizens in these books face the political and social upheavals of their generation. Beyond the Lavender Fields takes place on the eve of the French Revolution, as the 2 protagonists represent both sides of the conflict, the aristocracy who want to maintain the feudal system of privilege, and the workers who want to dethrone their king and create a democratic French Republic. A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice is based on the true story of the Carpathia, one of 2 ships who received an urgent distress call on midnight, April 15, 1912, from RMS Titanic, and was the only ship who answered the call. It's told in alternate chapters from the perspective of the captain of the Carpathia and a young female passenger on Titanic. This is a thrilling and awe-inspiring story which paints a portrait of fear and despair from the Titanic survivors, waiting in the freezing waters, uncertain if any rescue would come, and a heroic and compassionate leader, his methodical preparations for rescue, and his determination to act honorably and selflessly to save lives and care for the survivors. This is new historical fiction coming in the fall. The Opera Sisters is based on the true story of the Cook sisters, who smuggled valuables out of 1930s Nazi Germany to finance a daring secret operation to help Jews find hope for a new life in England in the last days before the outbreak of World War. In the Shadow of a Queen is one of the few historical fiction titles about Queen Victoria's unconventional progressive daughter, Princess Louise, who struggled to find her place within the rigid rules of the royal family, but went on to become a sculptor, embrace progressive political movements like women's rights, and for the first time since the Tudors, married outside of royalty. The Slow March of Light is a 1961 Cold War drama. It's told from alternate perspectives, an American soldier turned spy undercover in East Germany, and a West German nurse turned spy who helps East Germans escape the horrible, oppressive police state by forging documents and escaping to the West through crude underground tunnels. The Paper Daughters of Chinatown is new in paperback. It's the story of Chinese women who were tricked into coming to America, thinking they would wed wealthy husbands, but instead unscrupulous gangs beat them and drug them into lives of despair and prostitution in San Francisco in the 19th century. Local authorities were either corrupt or turned a blind eye, but Donaldina Cameron and other social justice activists took matters into their own hands to free these women and get them legal status in America. This is a great title to better understand the wounds of past injustices, to explain our current racial divisions. Both books were inspired by true stories. Coming in fall of 2022, we'll have a title about Princess Louise, the progressive daughter of Queen Victoria, by this author, Heather B. Moore. New in nonfiction, these are adult titles, but they are also suitable for younger readers. The genesis of why we fought is a question many readers of nonfiction, myself included, always ask ourselves when we're reading about World War II. What would I have done in the same circumstance? These are 7 largely untold stories to illustrate that World War II was fought on front lines far beyond conventional battlefields. Some were ordinary citizens like William Siebold, a German immigrant after World War I, and a U.S. citizen by World War II. When he was coerced by the Gestapo into becoming a spy in America, he instead approached the FBI and offered to become a double agent. His efforts successfully helped bring down a dangerous German spy network that was dedicated to stealing industrial secrets and sabotaging America on home soil. This history is in itself a civics lesson in how citizens have defended democratic values. This is some backlist nonfiction. We tend to do untold stories which also show the human side of conflict. The 3 titles to the left are short chapters with microbiographies of people who were swept up in historical events. The title on the right, She Stood for Freedom, is the true story of a white Southern teenager who faced the hostility of her parents and neighbors to join the civil rights movement by participating in lunch counter demonstrations and protests against segregation and for the protection of voting rights for all citizens. Here's a look at some recent cookbooks. Raised in the Kitchen has become very popular with school libraries and is a fun and educational cookbook for kids. It starts with the basics like baked potatoes, and as new skills are learned, the recipes advance in complexity towards kids' favorites like meals with chocolate and meals with cheese. Scrumptious is by the blogger The Girl Who Ate Everything and is a collection of recipes for people who need a big repertoire, from one-pan dinners to low-carb meals to the big rollout for game day. If it's been a while since you've cooked for a get-together, former food editor and food stylist Tara Teaspoon Bench has a fall cookbook called Delicious Gatherings, from sit-down dinners to intimate brunches to elaborate buffets for bigger crowds. Finally, Proper Romance are clean content, so they're suitable for all ages. These are not bonnet romances, there's no inspirational content at all. There's all the longing and desire you'd want in romance, but there's no onstage sex. Our most popular series are Proper Romance Victorian, and debuting this spring is the first title in Proper Romance Edwardian era, where we leave the corseted world of Queen Victoria into the golden age of England as we enter the 20th century, full of exciting inventions like the petrol motor car, which gave women a taste of freedom which would have scandalized their mothers. And in fall of 22, we'll have a new title by Sarah M. Eden, a standalone which uses characters from her previous books in her Penny Dreadful subseries. EARCs are available on Edelweiss and NetGalley. Our titles are also sold as ebooks to libraries on popular platforms using the purchase and circulation pricing models. Thank you and enjoy the show.